2025 officially became the lowest year for home sales in Vancouver in over 2 decades, and the December data just confirmed it. In this January 2026 Vancouver market update, we focus on 3 things that matter most right now: inventory levels, sales activity, and pricing across the market. Using the latest December numbers, we break down what actually changed as the year closed and how things shift and are setting up for early 26. This video walks through how inventory continues to build, why sales remain suppressed, and how pricing has adjusted quietly rather than dramatically. If you're trying to understand whether the market is stabilizing, softening further, or creating opportunity, this is where the answers start. Most importantly, at the end of this video, I highlight 2 specific areas buyers should be watching closely, where conditions are lining up for real value on a purchase. These are the pockets where leverage is starting to shift and where patient buyers may be able to negotiate far better terms than the broader headlines suggest. This update is also part of a Canada-wide collaboration with over 10 high-performing real estate YouTubers, all releasing their January market updates at the same time. If you want to compare what's happening in Vancouver to other major Canadian markets, you'll find the links to those videos in the description below. So we're going to jump into the news release from Greater Vancouver REALTORS. I want to highlight some commentary, some quotes, especially from Andrew Leese, who's an economist who contributes to this publication, before we break down the numbers itself. So right off the top, you're going to see 2025 saw the lowest annual sales total in over 2 decades. That's what we're dealing with here in 2025. And the first quote I wanted to state here is where Andrew states, "This year was one for the history books. Although the sales total was the lowest in over 2 decades, realtors were still busy listing properties. Sellers brought the highest total of listings to market on record since the mid-1990s, eclipsing the previous record high in 2008 by a little over 1,000 listings." And we all felt the pain this year, especially if you were a seller. It was hard to get deals done. It was hard just to get a lowball offer because we saw such an extension of listings, because there was so much competition in the marketplace. Even if you wanted an offer, and I had some clients instruct me to get even a lowball offer, we will look at anything. And buyers just did not want to play because there was another 5 or 10 properties that were very similar, that were priced better, that they didn't even need to go forward with a lowball offer. And that's why properties really started to sit this past year. And unfortunately, in 2026, it's going to continue that path. We're still going to see a rise in inventory. We know that there are a record number of mortgage renewals. So there's going to be more distressed sellers. When we see the distressed sellers, it's going to bring down pricing averages. So again, as a seller in 2026, there's definitely going to be some more pain. Moving down here, Andrew Leese just goes over his forecast of what he thought was going to happen in 2025. And he stated that the forecast that he put out and Greater Vancouver REALTORS put out last January noted a foreseeable downside risk, which while prescient, unfortunately materialized in 2025. Specifically, we noted that trade tensions with the USA could negatively impact sales and prices, and the downside risk came to pass. The upshot, however, is that the negative impact of these trade tensions appear to be easing, and consumer sentiment has improved modestly over the second half of the year. So there's a couple things there I want to break down. Definitely, buyer sentiment has improved because rates have dropped down. These are the lowest rates that we've seen, I believe, since 2021. So you can get some good, cheap money. I know for myself, I've locked into a 3.55 fixed. I'm happy with some of my variable rates as well. And when it comes to these trade tensions with the US, I do believe that there is a scenario, an argument that could state that the Vancouver market and the Canadian real estate market could stay extremely soft for the entire Trump presidency. He is such a wild card. We know what he just did in Venezuela. He has an American first policy, and he doesn't care what happens to people around him. And this is not a political spiel whatsoever. It's just stating the facts. We know when he started talking about the trade tensions, that the stock market started to bottom out. People lost a lot of money in the stock market, and that was their down payments. And when he started talking about the tariffs and implementing them, that's really what made 2025 a very difficult year. With what's going on in Venezuela, obviously with the oil, how is that going to affect our oil industry now in Canada? Right? So all these things that he does, it doesn't provide any stability for Canada. And that's why I think for 2026, 2027, and, to the end of his presidency, we are going to be in some rocky territory here with real estate. Great if you're a buyer, not so great if you're a seller. Finally, I wanted to go over Andrew Leese, just his forecast of what he believes is going to happen in 2026. So he states, with sales down and inventory remaining plentiful, pricing eased across all property types since the start of 25. Sales and prices weren't the only metrics that came down. Borrowing costs fell nearly 1 full percentage point. With lower prices, lower borrowing costs, and plenty of inventory to choose from, home buyers in 2026 are starting the year with favorable conditions, Whether these conditions translate into a market with stronger demand will be the million-dollar question, and we'll be monitoring this story closely as it unfolds. So I don't think that we're going to see anything in terms of stronger market demand. I think buyers are still wanting a deal. If buyers are out there, they do not want to cooperate for the most part with sellers. It's been very difficult to put deals together, and with some of these distressed sellers that are coming down the pipeline, whether it's a way of power of sale agreements or people that just can't afford their new increase in pricing, it's going to bring those numbers down. And that's why we've seen almost a year of consecutive price drops, micro declines. So we're going to dive into the numbers here in terms of sales, inventory, new inventory, and pricing. And then we're going to jump into those two areas that I teased off the top to show you where you can get some really good value in Vancouver right now. So what I have on screen here are numbers from the Rennie Advance. They do a really good job in collecting data. What I like in the red dotted line here, it shows the 10-year average. So you can really see where things stack on in a historical context and not just taking the past 6 to 12 months into consideration. So we're going to start with sales here. Now comment here, there were a total of 35,236 sales in 2025, down 12% from the previous year and 30% below the past 10-year average. This was the fewest sales in any year going back to at least 2005, the beginning of available data. We know that Andrew Lee said this is the lowest that we've seen since the mid-90s, but this data goes back to 2005 that they're referencing. So what you're going to see here across all segments, just a huge decline in sales. Starting here with the detached, 33% below the 10-year average, 7% decrease year over year, and just 1,137 sales. We're going to jump into the Rennie Advanced numbers here. We're going to start with sales here. And the comment I wanted to go over was there was a total of 35,236 sales in 2025, down 12% from the previous year and 30% below the 10-year average. This was the fewest sales in any year going back to at least 2005, the beginning of available data for this point. And we know that Andrew Lee stated that this was the lowest amount of sales since the mid-1990s. So what I love about the Rennie Advance, they have this nice red dotted line. So this is the 10-year seasonal average. So you can really see in context how the market is faring and not just looking 6 months or 12 months behind. So with the detached sales here, you're going to see that we were 33% below the 10-year average and 7% below year over year in December 2024. So there's just 762 detached sales. And in terms of the 10-year December average, you can see what it usually is at just over 1,100 sales. As we move down to townhouses here, a 13% drop in sales year over year. Usually on average, there was 581 sales that we would typically see in Greater Vancouver. There was just 462, and that represents a 20% drop versus the 10-year average. And finally, the condo segment here, no surprise, we're 13% down in sales year over year, 21% below the 10-year average, and around 300 units below what we typically see in a December. So, when we start to see this lag in sales, it all contributes to lower sales pricing. Less sales, we're going to see as well these inventory numbers that are just so dramatic that really makes you understand why the market is what it is currently. So we're going to jump into the new listing category here, and there was a total of 99,267 new listings in 2025, up 8% year over year and 18% above the 10-year average. This was the most new listings in any year going back to at least 2005, the beginning of available data. So again, with these detached numbers here, 12% increase in new listings year over year, a decline a little bit of 1.5%. And keep in mind, these are just new listings. This is not inventory. Townhomes here with new listings, 4% below December 2024, but 8% above the 10-year seasonal average. And then with condos, and this is the big one, we know the condo market has been suffering big time, 17% above the 10-year average and on par with what we saw in December of 2024. Moving on here in terms of inventory, and this is what's really going to pave the way to the sales numbers on the next slide deck. And there were 7.8 months of inventory in December, down from 8.2 in November, but well up past the 10-year average for December. And when we're looking here on the inventory numbers are quite shocking. So as we start with detached, this is what I want to point out: 44% above the 10-year average, 9% increase in inventory year over year. So again, detached I still think is your best value if you can get into that segment. We're seeing pricing that we haven't seen in a long time on Vancouver East, especially Vancouver's West Side. A lot of great value out there. When it comes to townhome inventory, look at this: 83% above the 10-year average and 22% increase year over year. These are huge markers if you're a buyer that you should be salivating over. The condo market, 72% above the 10-year average and 9% increase in inventory year over year. And you can see with all these segments, just a continuation from 2021 onward in terms of an increase in inventory. As we get into pricing here, and what I really like with the Rennie Advanced, they're going to compare this yellow line with the Fraser Valley, so you can see how your segment reacts and compares to the Fraser Valley market. So with the detached pricing in Vancouver from December, the median price point home, $1.75 million. So that's a 6% decline year over year. The Fraser Valley saw a big loss of 10%, so double digits. Their average detached is 1.36 million. And you can see that during 2021, the pandemic years here, people could work from home. There was a mass exodus outside of Vancouver. People went to the Valley. But once they figured out that the Valley wasn't for them, or they were forced to come back to work, we saw a huge decline in pricing, and that's why we've seen almost $300,000 drop since 2021 in the Fraser Valley. So if you're in the Fraser Valley looking for detached, this is a very nice area for you to get involved with. When it comes to townhomes, Vancouver saw a 10% double-digit drop in townhomes year to year. $960,000 is now the average townhome price. In comparison to the Fraser Valley, that saw a 3% drop, and their average is $775,000. And then following up with condos, Vancouver 11% drop year over year. The average Vancouver condo now sits at $640,000, where the Fraser Valley is sitting at $487,000 with just a 5% drop. So Vancouver definitely did not fare as well in the condo and the townhome, the attached segments, but did a little bit better on the detached side of things. So this is where we're sitting. When we look at these numbers, I want to bring up two areas that are going to be very beneficial for you if you're looking for value right now in Vancouver. So what I have for you on screen here are three areas in comparison. So the green line here is the Greater Vancouver board as a whole. And the two areas that I'm going to be highlighting is Cole Harbour and then Mount Pleasant. Especially on the Mount Pleasant side of things, an area that has been so strong, actually shows seller market conditions, but has a huge drop off in terms of pricing. These are specific to one bedroom condo properties. So if you're a first time home buyer, investor, possibly you made some good money in the stock market this year and want to put it into a physical asset, these are some areas that I would look at. So in the orange here is Cole Harbour, purple Mount Pleasant, green the rest of Greater Vancouver. But you'll see here with the Cole Harbour, at the peak, this is back in May of 2024, the average one bedroom was just under $800,000. And you can see throughout the year of 2025, the pretty significant drops, dropping down to $675,000 on average. So we're down, what is this, from $120,000 essentially just from May of 2024, and a 9.4% drop in price year over year. Mount Pleasant as well saw a drop here from March, sitting at $676,000 down to $612,000, an 8% drop year over year. And Mount Pleasant is quite surprising. I have a few rental properties in that area. It always does, and it does perform well. But I was shocked to see how much of a decline Mount Pleasant is, especially with how popular the area is as well. And what I would definitely be focusing on if you are looking in Vancouver for something, these are some of the areas. And what I like about the stats is you can get quite specific. So again, these are for one bedroom properties. If we go to two bedroom, you see that the value is really not there. Everything is pretty much quite stagnant. It's a little bit of a drop in Cole Harbour, below where they were a couple years ago, but Mount Pleasant is actually a little bit higher than what it was. Even if we go up to the 3-bedroom markers here, it's pretty, there's been a little bit of an increase. You're not getting as much value. So this is why I like this type of data to be very specific in segment and type of property. And this is definitely a highlight for buyers if you're looking for value in these markets. So if you're needing some help on this, make sure you book that discovery call with me. It's in the QR code below, and you can find the link in my calendar as well. So I hope this is helpful for you going forward in 2026. And if you need anything, reach out. See you on the next one.